Greetings, fellow Kerbonauts. My name is Rice. I am a KSP Minimalist, and I have some unfortunate news for ya. It seems the old save file that had our Minimalist space program stored on it is officially kaput. Now, the old Minimalist space program was played on version 0.20, and for whatever reason, it didn't transfer very well to 0.22. As a matter of fact, when I tried to load it on 0.22, it just died. However, never fear. From the ashes of the old space program arises a new one in the same minimalist stylings that you're all used to. This is the Minimalist Shuttle program. Now, what's this program all about? Well, if you've been playing this game as long as I have, going into space starts to seem rather routine. As a matter of fact, most people that have played this game longer than a month could probably build a rocket and go into space blindfolded. And then I thought, well, let's bring back the spirit of challenge again. And get that very same feeling we had the first time we went into orbit, or the first time we went to the moon. And that is what the Minimalist Shuttle program is all about. We are going to build space stations and fuel depots around the Kerbal system and the Mun and Minmus and maybe the other planets. However, there is going to be a twist, and that twist is everything must be brought up into space and back down from space via our space shuttle. Now, what makes this incredibly fun and challenging is that you can't take the standard rocket approach. You can't load up something like 100 tons worth of cargo on top of a rocket on a launch pad and send it into orbit. Shuttles have a lot of limitations in terms of weight they can carry and the amount of bulk you can send into space. Not to mention, just launching the darn thing has a huge learning curve. I mean, look at this guy. It's not exactly a symmetrical craft, right? Everything is so asymmetric, the weight and the center of mass is completely off. And so throughout the entire flight, you have to keep track of pitch angles and where the center of mass is moving and tilting your craft in such a way so you don't flip over like crazy. I mean, just everything seems so incredibly awkward and inefficient, at least in the realm of Kerbal Space Program, that I can't help but be excited all over again over the simple things like just getting in the orbit or having just barely enough fuel getting to the moon and back. Now, as you probably noticed, there's a couple mods we'll be using. The two big ones, which I used to construct this space shuttle, are the KW Rocketry Pack and the B9 Aerospace Pack. Probably two of some of the most common and heavily used mods out of Kerbal Space Program Spaceport. And as part of the challenge, none of what we launch into space will be launched from the actual rocket pad. As a matter of fact, because of the nature of me constructing these shuttles, everything will be launched from the runway. And it won't be just any standard launch, it'll be launched shuttle style. So that means 2 side boosters, 1 main fuel tank, and of course the rocket boosters that are attached to the shuttle itself that draws the fuel from the main fuel tank. Because let's face it, it'd be way too easy to take a shuttle, slap it on top of a rocket rather than on its side, and send it directly into space. And while that would make our lives easier, we all know, as Kerbalnauts, that doing things the easy way is not the Kerbal way. So at the very least, you're going to see 3 different types of shuttles during this series. One is the light shuttle, designed for transporting crew and tool modules. The second is the heavy shuttle, designed for carrying whole station modules and bringing fuel up into orbit. And third is the lunar shuttle, designed for carrying equipment outside of Kerbal's influence and out to the moon and to Minmus. And it's during this episode we get an intimate look at our heavy shuttle. Weighing 25 tons, it is composed of 28 parts with the ability to carry a maximum of 12 tons of stuff into orbit. Now, as you can see, we are just rocketing into space using that main engine provided by the KW Rocketry Pack, generating about 3,600 kilonewtons of thrust, and the 2 ohms engines provided by the B9 Aerospace Pack, each one generating about 100 kilonewtons of thrust. Now, those two OHMS engines on the side were originally intended by the B-9 rocketry pack to be used for vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, because those engines have the ability to turn a full 90 degrees, which is perfect for using for this shuttle. Mainly because gimbaling engines are really important when sending a shuttle into space. The actual shuttle itself has its engines with the capability to gimbal about 10.5 degrees in either direction. Unfortunately, with the exception of those B-9 engines, there is no engine in the Kerbal Space Program inventory that will gimbal that far. So to compensate for the lack of gimbaling on the main engine, I slapped on a ton of inline reaction wheels. As you can see on the nose cone, it's just below the nose cone of the main fuel tank. Those reaction wheels are provided by the B-9 Aerospace pack, and each reaction wheel has the ability to provide 125 units of torque. And since there's 5 reaction wheels on that main fuel tank and 1 reaction wheel on the space shuttle, that equates to a total of 750 torque units that this shuttle is capable of using. And believe me, you need every single torque unit you have to keep this shuttle stable during flight. Mainly because there's a total of 3,800 kilonewtons of thrust working slantwise to the center of mass. And because it's working slantwise and not directly along the center of mass, the shuttle will have a tendency to dip its nose and will try to force itself to go end over end. And the only thing that's preventing it from doing that is, one, those OHMS thrusters, which unfortunately by itself don't provide enough thrust to counter the main engine, even if you pivot them the full 90 degrees. So second, you've got the inline reaction wheels, which provides the remainder force necessary to keep the shuttle at least relatively straight. So here we go. Now that we are in suborbital flight, it's time to go into our insertion burn. Now, even executing maneuver nodes poses a little bit of a challenge because those maneuver nodes assume that your direction of thrust is along the length of your vehicle along the center of mass. But as you can see, that booster is angled way off center. So that means you have to angle the nose of your craft just off of the maneuver node marker. And so here we go, we are thrusting at full power and going into our insertion burn. Now what we're looking to do is try to circularize ourselves at about 101 kilometers above Kerbal. And as you can see, we're trying desperately to keep our nose in the direction where we want to turn it. And because the center of mass is not only constantly moving, but also drastically moving, and the thrust from our main engine remains consistent, eventually the main thrust from our engine is going to overpower our inline reaction wheels. But still, Jebediah and Bill, carry on. But Jebediah may have complete confidence in this vehicle, but if Bill's expression is any indicator of his confidence in this newfound vehicle, I imagine he's one breath away from hitting the ejection button. But don't tell him this. We didn't install an ejection button. Shh. So it looks like our inline reaction wheels are having trouble keeping up. So what we're doing is we are inclining our OHMS thrusters at negative 22 degrees to help counteract the thrust from our main engine. And it's starting to look like that our main tank is expended. Yup, it is empty. So what we're going to do is we are going to eject our main tank. And because we're in suborbital flight, that tank should safely fall back to Kerbal. And then we activate our OHMS thrusters and deactivate our main booster and incline our OHMS thrusters along the line of our center of mass, and off we go. And even though we've survived our launch into space and we are safely in orbit, it looks like Bill is still doubtful about the prospects of our mission. Even so, it's time to make ourselves at home by extending our solar panel and recharging those batteries so we can continue to use our inline reaction wheel. Curiously enough, those reaction wheels are so powerful that they drain the batteries fairly quickly, so we need to make sure that we keep it charged. And now it's time to open those cargo bay doors and reveal the prize inside, which is the first piece of our Kerbal National Space Station. And with the first piece of our station ready for its inaugural launch, I think it only fitting that Bill, our resident astronaut cynic, come by and inspect the vehicle. Also to pop into the cargo bay, make sure that its contents survive the launch, make sure there's no nicks or scratches or anything. And much to Bill's surprise, it looks like everything is just fine. What do you think, Bill? Are we ready to launch this thing? And he gives the dance of joy as a stern yes. Either that or he's got a little bit of space sickness, and I think he's fed up with hanging around outside. So I think it's time for him to head back into the cozy little cabin of his shuttle. And actually, before we do that, let's hang outside the windshield there and show Jeb what he's missing. So let's switch over to IVA, and hey there, Bill! How's it going? He does not look like he's having any fun. So I think it's time that we bring him in. So let's jet around. Well, first let's do a little bit of a tour of the shuttle first, and do a quick inspection. Make sure that the doors look fine. And while I'm tempted to check the heat tiles underneath the shuttle, make sure we're ready for our re-entry, I think we can trust the Kerbal engineering that everything is hunky-dory. So let's head back in. And even though we've got our core module successfully deployed now, Bill, I know you don't want to do this, but we got to go out there one more time just to check to see if the module is intact and ready to go. As you can see, there's no solar panels or any regenerative abilities on that thing. Effectively, it's just a big tool shed in space currently, until we start attaching some power units onto the thing. However, it's on a stable orbit of 101 kilometers above Kerbal, and it's a perfect centerpiece for building our space station on top of it. And what do you think, Bill? Is it ready to go? Oh, and the guy is in a hurry to get back into the shuttle. Okay, so we'll take that as a yes. So let's jet on ever so carefully towards the hatch and just gently tippy-tap the hatch. Oh, just missed it. I guess we're going to go around for another turn. Sorry, Bill. We're going to do another victory lap here. Our very first successful shuttle launch and our very first piece that we put in orbit. Okay, I promise, this is the last lap we do, Bill. Here we go! Coming in! Straight toward the cabin. Oh! Watch the head. Alright, let's reorient ourselves again there, and let's slowly, I promise, this time a little bit more gentle-like, right into the hatch. Now, with the first part of our space station successfully launched, it's time to head on home, and there's a bit of tedium involved with coming back into the atmosphere and landing back home, so I've got this thing sped up to about 5 times, and as you can see, I'm setting up my maneuver node. Now, generally, for the average space shuttle in my fleet, I found it optimal to set up my periaps above, usually around 38 kilometers, 38.5 kilometers above the Kerbal Space Center. However, it usually varies, and as you'll see in a little bit, especially for a shuttle this heavy, it drastically varies. And unfortunately, similar to the real space shuttle, this one really isn't all that graceful when it comes to gliding. Just apparently true to the real space shuttle, this thing flies like a brick. It's basically a big ol' semi-truck with wings that flies with all the grace of an elephant. Now, usually with the lighter shuttles I've designed, I can afford to get a flight path that's short of the Kerbal Space Center, because usually their glide capabilities are excellent. However, this one I've underestimated, and it's one of those follies I keep on doing, especially with this heavy shuttle. And you saw that I turned on those ohms thrusters to try to gain some additional speed, something that the real space shuttle, can't really do. But, this is a Kerbal space program, so we can do just about anything. However, I've expended all of my fuel trying to thrust all I could to reach that space center. And usually, bringing the shuttle home is kind of 50-50. Sometimes I'll hit the runway, sometimes I won't. And this one I fall short. And so the best I could hope for is not to hit those trees. Now, those trees have no impact on my vehicle, even if I go through them. However, I'd feel bad just striking those trees. So here I am, just gliding very carefully, hoping not to hit those trees. And we're coming in at a pretty brisk pace. And there we are. We're just about ready to hit the ground. And down we go. All right, and let's get the nose down. Perfect. All right, so now we hit the RCS thrusters and go and reverse the RCS thrusters to slow ourselves down, and we just feather the brakes. Even though the landing gears are fairly well spread out, this thing still has the ability to flip itself over if I brake too hard, so we got to be real careful with that. And here we are at full stop, and it looks like Bill and Jeb seem kind of indifferent about their circumstances. Obviously, Jeb is a little bit disappointed that the fun is all over, and I can only imagine that Bill is happy to finally be home. And once again, my name is Rice, and I declare this episode mission complete. And we'll see you next time.